Good morning and welcome to week 5 of your MBA class, Organizational Management. And this doesn't mean quite as much with this class because it's a online class, but we are getting towards the end of the semester on campus and online right now. So week 5 of week 8. So be paying attention to the syllabus and the assignments that you've got and try to steer your efforts towards getting everything done with plenty of time as we move into the finish line and the finish of this class in week 8. For this week, I've got a couple of chapters, chapters 9 and 10, which I'll go over briefly today, a couple of key points that I want to highlight in each chapter. And then also I've got some videos that I wanted to share with you for this week. And let me get this shared real quick. Find where I need to be. Okay, this is for week 5, and I will be putting my video post on shortly. But there's 3 supplemental videos that I've got for you this week that I think are really intriguing and really interesting. And one of them, actually all 3 of these I just saw for the first time this week. One is appreciate one of your fellow classmates, Keith Fort, shared with me last week. I'd actually seen this briefly before, but I had not watched it all the way through, and it's a really intriguing video. It actually goes more towards our discussion of last week with motivation, but I wanted to include it for this week just so you can take a look at it. It's the surprising truth about what motivates us. Really interesting video, and I wanted to share that. The next one is a TED Talk on the next manufacturing revolution. And this is really interesting. It seems to be about the topic of manufacturing. However, as you're listening to this and watching this video, it should be very evident to all of us that all of this is going to have to deal with organizational behavior and organizational management. So when you're watching and listening to this video, be thinking about all of the implications on organizations, their behavior, their management, and it runs all the way through this. It's kind of the subtext in a way, but there's no doubt about it that all of the evolutions, revolutions, changes that he's talking about in this video are going to have dramatic impacts on organizations, their management, their development, the behaviors of the organizations. So please pay attention to that. And then the last video that I found is on digital transformation. It's about a 4-minute video, but it's really intriguing. And again, as you watch and listen to a video such as this, much like the previous one that I discussed, think about all of the ways all of this is going to influence organizations as we move forward, because it's going to be a dramatic impact. So anyway, I thought I'd share these videos with you. And again, thanks to Keith Fort for sharing the first one that you'll be watching, Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. Very interesting video. Okay, let me get to my slides and we'll look over a little bit on Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. Chapter 9 is on the foundations of group behavior. Groups are defined as 2 or more individuals interacting and interdependent who come together to achieve particular objectives. They can be formal or informal groups. Social identity theory, the perspective that considers when and why individuals consider themselves members of groups. Obviously, we'll be talking about groups and teams in the next chapter, and this is getting to be a much bigger part of the landscape. Obviously, the more businesses and organizations are emphasizing groups and work teams. I don't see that changing. However, it will change in technique and substance somewhat as we battle some of our current circumstances, and maybe we're more dispersed. But luckily, we have tools such as Zoom, such as many of the other things that we're used to working with um, in this process. So some of the different concepts of groups, you got in-group favoritism. This occurs when we see members of our group as better than other people and people not in our group all the same. And then out group is the inverse, can mean anyone outside the group, but usually it's identified is an identified other group. The in-group favoritism part of it, as much as we still try to not have that occur, depending on the size of the group or even the makeup of the group, it can definitely happen. There are techniques and tools to try to make sure that it doesn't. And unfortunately, sometimes when we do have fractured groups and we have favoritism, we have things like that, it's predominantly because of sloppy management, basically, and sloppy structures. Look at some of the norms of groups, acceptable standards of behavior with any group that are shared by the group members, emotions, conformity, the behavior within the groups all impact the norms of the group. Deviant workplace behavior, voluntary behavior that violates significant organizational norms and in doing so threatens the well-being of the organization and its members. Again, no matter how good of an organization you're in or how good of a group structures you're in, this is a possibility. And sometimes it's because somebody hasn't bought into the need or the purpose of the group. They may just be going through the motions, or they might actually be somewhat outwardly violent against the group and its stated purpose. So you have to be aware of all of that. This can impact production. Some of the symptoms of that might be leaving early, working slowly intentionally, wasting resources, property, could be sabotage, stealing from the organization, can be political, showing favoritism, gossiping, things like that, and then even personal aggression, from sexual harassment to verbal abuse, stealing, things like that. The size of groups, there's a lot of research and a lot of discussion on what's the best size for a group, and I don't know that there's any one best size. I think it depends on the task of the group. Large groups are kind of consistently better at problem solving. But within all groups, some deviant behavior that can occur is social loafing. Tendency of individuals expend less effort when working collectively. They kind of expect everybody else to pick up the slack. Another big component of groups is the cohesiveness, or the degree to which members of the group are attracted to each other and motivated to stay in the group. Again, this goes from one end of the spectrum from the other. Some parts of cohesiveness have to do with the mission that group is tasked with. Sometimes it can be impacted by the time that the members act as a group. If you're just kind of a ad hoc pickup group and you're just going to be doing something over a day or couple or 3-day period, may be hard to get that cohesiveness. If it's a group in which you're going to be working together, let's say if it's an MBA program, or if it's a long-term work group and you work together over a long period of time. Look at some of these political campaigns that work together over a long period of time. Sometimes there gets to be an incredible amount of cohesiveness in those. And that can also carry into larger organizations and larger groups. Some of the ways we can encourage cohesiveness in groups, the smaller the better, probably. Encourage agreement with group goals If you've got folks that can't buy into that, maybe it'd be better they're not a part of that group necessarily. Increase the time spent together, increase the status and perceived difficulty of group membership, stimulate competition with other groups, rewards to the group rather than to individual members, and sometimes physically isolating the group. You'll see groups go on retreats, and they'll actually go off site, or they'll go to a different environment, just so that helps bring about more cohesiveness in the group. Diversity, we hear a lot of talk about diversity in organizations. Well, it can be the same way in groups. Degree to which members of the group are similar or different from one another. Types of group diversity: surface level and deep level diversity. In general, if you have depending on the problem and the problem set that you're dealing with, if you have diversity of opinion, thought, different things like that, it can definitely impact, and many times positively impact, the group's work product and directions. Two things that can impact groups are groupthink, which relates to norms and describes situations in which group pressure for conformity deter the group from critically appraising unusual, minority, and unpopular views. And group shift describes the way group members tend to exaggerate their initial positions when discussing alternatives and arriving at solutions. Minimizing groupthink, some of the ways to accomplish that: keep the group size to less than 10. Encourage group leaders to actively seek input from all members and avoid expressing their own opinions. Appoint a devil's advocate. Use exercises that stimulate, activate discussion and diverse alternatives. I used two of these extensively in my executive business career with my company. We had our general management group had about 12 members in it normally. We had our executive team, which had about 7 or 8 members. We had a board that had 10 to 12 members, or 9 to 12 members, depending on the makeup. And one of the tools I would use quite a bit is to, when we would go around the horn and have people express their opinion, I would speak last as the CEO and chairman of the board. That way my opinion up front didn't influence everybody else's opinions. And then another tool I would use, particularly in our management meeting structures, even our board meetings, is at times I'd be a devil's advocate. And it might be a position that I didn't necessarily advocate myself or believe in myself, but I felt like it was a position that needed to be heard. And if I didn't see anybody else taking that position, sometimes I would do it. And it did tend to stimulate and sometimes move discussions in different directions from what they might have done originally. Group decision-making techniques: interacting groups, meeting face-to-face, rely on verbal and nonverbal interactions, brainstorming, generating a list of creative alternatives, and most importantly, not letting people evaluate until you're done with the brainstorming process. Nominal group technique restricts discussion during the decision-making process to encourage independent thinking. Okay, that gets us through chapter 9. Let me jump over to chapter 10 real quick. This one is on understanding work teams. We've discussed why teams and groups are so unpopular right now. It's just generally believed in more open cultures and more team-based cultures is what we tend to be going to in organizations. That's what seems to be popular with generational transfers that are going on right now with the younger generations. They feel more comfortable working in groups. It does spread the load out, spread the pressure out a little bit so that it doesn't fall on any one individual's shoulders. A couple of different types: work groups and work teams. Problem-solving teams, members often from the same department, share ideas or suggest improvements, rarely given authority to unilaterally implement any of their suggestions. Sometimes I have problem-solving teams where they make recommendations back to, like for instance, in a university setting, you might have a problem-solving team, which is a when you're looking at hiring a new employee. So there's a recruitment team or an interview team for that. It could be 4 to 5 people, and they interview and they go through resumes, they pick finalists, and then they do the actual interview process, and then they make a recommendation to the dean of the school based on their work. Now, the dean can choose what the team recommends, or there may be something that the dean knows or factors into the equation that might want him to pick one of the other finalists, or maybe even just say, I don't feel real comfortable with who's selected. We're going to just open this whole process open again, back up again. Self-managed work teams could be 10 to 15 employees in highly related jobs. Team takes on the supervisory responsibilities, scheduling, planning, assigning tasks, things like that. They may select and evaluate members. They might even be able to replace members if they feel like they need to. Cross-functional teams, members from the same level but diverse areas within an organization, exchange information, develop new ideas and solve problems, coordinate complex projects. Development may be time-consuming due to complexity and diversity. I've done some MBA program work out at Spirit Aerosystems, and I know there's a lot of cross-functional teams in manufacturing environments such as that. We'll have discussions within class in that respect. Virtual teams, computer technology ties dispersed team together. Managing in virtual teams ensures trust and established among members, monitor progress closely, and publicize the efforts and products of the team throughout the organization. We're getting a lot of work currently with virtual teams in our current environment. Thank God for things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, some of the softwares that allow us to do that. Here's some of the factors to creating effective teams: context, composition, and the processes that teams work with. And here's some of the potential team roles and team member roles that you might have in different teams. Sometimes you have a controller, somebody who examines details and enforces rules. You might have an organizer that provides structure. Might have a creator, might have an advisor from outside. So these are just some of the different roles that can fall within the team. Turning individuals into team players, selection is part of that, getting the right people. Sometimes if you're going to have a long functioning team, or it's going to have a big enough work product that's going to come out of it, it may be worth doing some training and some workshops on how to work within that team structure, and then the rewards that could be involved in that would encourage cooperative efforts within the team. Teams aren't always the answer. Sometimes we try to fit a square peg in a round hole. The complexity of the work can determine whether it might be the right structure, the common purpose that exists, and the interdependence within the group and the members itself. Okay, that gets us through chapter 9 and 10. And again, I highlighted some of the videos. I hope you'll take the time to look through those as well. Again, I look forward to any questions or comments, or shoot me an email if I can be of help, or even a phone call if you'd like to talk to me. And I'm more than willing to make any time in person if anybody would like to visit in person as well. So again, we're at week 5 of 8, so be sure and start planning your work efforts into the finish line, and try to keep up and get caught up as much as you can in this next couple of weeks, so you get everything done by week 8. All right, well, thank you all for your attention, and reach out to me if I can be of help in any way. Thank you all. Stay safe.